Anotherway, Erasmus Plus Program, Cooperation for Innovation and the Exchange of Good Practices, KA2 Strategic Partnership for Europe, funded by EU, number 2019-2-IT 03-KA205-016466. Co-funded by the Erasmus Plus Program of the European Union. Mediterranea, Associazione per lo sviluppo locale. This work is licensed under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 4.0 International License. To view a copy of this license, visit http://creativecommons.org or send a letter to Creative Commons, P.O. Box 1866, Mountain View, CA 94042, USA. Per altra via. Anotherway. An original method by Francesco Piccolo. Module 2. Hosts. Lessons 7 and 8. Tourism and accessibility. The aim of this lesson is to come to an understanding of how the two terms in the title are intimately interconnected. The historical examination of the evolution of the concepts of tourism and accessibility helps to understand how they can guide us in the design and implementation of an AW. It must be said, however, that here I consider appropriate to mention only those normative contributions that have had supranational value, either for novelty of content or for the very fact that they are issued by international bodies and organizations, UN, EU, WTO, etc. This does not exclude that in every nation there is a sensibility, a literature, and a legislative framework on the subject. But, hic et nunc, we need to know the basic principles that have inspired us in our nations to talk about accessible tourism, or more precisely, accessibility to tourism. I will therefore leave it to you, if you consider appropriate to do so, to go further into the discussion of these issues in your countries. Holidays, the Social Needs, written in 1976 in the UK, is the first document attesting the willingness of the English Tourist Board, together with Trade Union Congress and other tourist boards, to open a debate on how to allow access to tourism. understood as an emerging need during the holidays, also to people in economic, social, physical difficulties. I invite you to reflect on how holidays, and therefore tourism, are indicated as a need. Therefore, if the possibility of traveling and visiting new places, if the enjoyment of beauty is a need, it is not surprising that this need intersects the path of human rights. In 1981, Holidays Care Service offers information and advice to disabled citizens of the UK, echoing the World Programme of Action concerning disabled persons, AWPA, which is a global strategy to increase disability prevention, rehabilitation, and equal opportunities for the full participation of people with disabilities in social life and national development. The WPA also emphasizes the need to address disability from a human rights perspective. The AWPA is a UN action born in 1981, proclaimed by the United Nations as the International Year of People with Disabilities. Affirming the right of people with disabilities to satisfy their legitimate needs for sociality and spiritual growth, the AWPA traces a path that will be followed again and first by the English Tourist Board, which in 1989 brought the Tourism for All protocol. In the same year in Italy, in my opinion, a clear definition of accessibility was formulated. Article 2, letter G of the Italian Ministerial Law Decree number 236 of 1989 defines accessibility as the possibility also for a person with reduced or impaired motor or sensorial capabilities to reach the building and each and every of its facilities and environmental components to easily gain access to them and use spaces and equipment in conditions of adequate safety and autonomy. Extraordinary definition, considering that it is formulated 6 years before the Barcelona Declaration, the City and the Disabled of 1995. In 1990, the Tourism for All in Europe, an event with over 2,000 participants in the European Year of Tourism. This was followed in 1993 by the conferences in London, October, and Antwerp, November, which led to the formation of a European working group with the aim of developing standards to certify the conditions of use of tourist facilities. The work will continue in Rome in May of the following year, on the occasion of the Congress Tourism for All Networking. However, I underline the importance of the Tourism 2000 Tourism for All in Europe Conference of October 1993 in London within the Year of Elderly People and Solidarity Between Generations, sponsored by EU. This is crucial because here are presented the results of the first study at European level, entitled Profiting from Opportunities, a New Market for Tourism, and carried out by two SROs on tourism for people with disabilities and predictable economic development projections. The conclusion is that better accessibility of tourism facilities is a social benefit, but also an important economic benefit. The concept affirmed in Barcelona in the already mentioned conference of 1995 identifies the community as the one who must promote the best conditions for the development of the person, avoiding and eliminating the causes that hinder or make it difficult. The cities adhering to the agreement undertake to promote a wider knowledge of disabled people, to ensure the right to their diversity, and to receive attention to their specific needs. They also promote and guarantee disabled people's access to various city activities, cultural, recreational, and sports, buildings, and fuel mobility. They undertake to use means of signaling and information suitable for each type of disability. Article 13 of the Amsterdam Treaty of 1997 deals in general with non-discrimination and also covers disability. The Council Directive 2000/78/EC of 27th of November 2000 establishing a general framework for equal treatment in employment and occupation establishes the definitive abandonment of the term handicap in favor of the term disability. To fully understand the meaning of this change in the legislative and official field, it is sufficient to reflect on the classification operated by ICIDH, International Classification of Impairments, Disabilities and Handicap, which analyzes and evaluates consequences associated with health conditions according to three fundamental categories: impairment, organic and/or functional damage, disability, loss of operational capability due to impairment, handicap, difficulty that the individual faces in the environment they are in because of their impairment. For a very long time, the disabled person has been classified with reference to his or her state of difficulty in a world not suited to its needs and possibilities. And this despite ICIDH itself making it clear that the handicap classification is a classification of situations and not of individuals. Therefore, for a long time, the situation was confused with the person. Consequently, making something accessible does not mean doing a favor, but guaranteeing a right. The Madrid Declaration of 2002 affirms the will of disabled people to have equal opportunities and no charity, and also that disabled people are not invisible citizens. The change of perspective is clear. This is not a social service for the disadvantaged, but a right that must be guaranteed to everyone. The year 2003 is the European Year of People with Disabilities, and the Commission of the Communities is aiming to achieve a sustainable and operational strategy for disability issues in Europe. The document Equal Opportunities for People with Disabilities, a European Action Plan, is issued with the main objective of boosting equal opportunities for people with disabilities. The EU project One Stop Shop for Accessible Tourism in Europe, OSSATE, of 2005 contributes to the evolution of the concept of accessible tourism, identifying through the accessibility market and stakeholder analysis, three different types of consumers: disabled people, the elderly, people in need of special care for a limited period of time, i.e. able-bodied with specific needs. The time is ripe for the various experiences of accessible tourism to be combined at European level. The European Network for Accessible Tourism (ENAT) was founded in 2006, but 2006 is also the year of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. This is a fundamental and binding document that represents a real turning point. The Article 1 declaims, "The purpose of the present Convention is to promote, protect, and ensure the full and equal enjoyment of all human rights and fundamental freedoms by all persons with disabilities, and to promote respect for their inherent dignity." Persons with disabilities include those who have long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairments, which in interaction with various barriers may hinder their full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with others. At Article 9 we read, Accessibility 9.1 To enable persons with disabilities to live independently and participate fully in all aspects of life, states parties shall take appropriate measures to ensure to persons with disabilities access on an equal basis with others to the physical environments, to transportation, to information and communications, including information and communications technologies and systems, and to other facilities and services open or provided to the public, both in urban and in rural areas. These measures, which shall include the identification and elimination of obstacles and barriers to accessibility, shall apply to, inter alia, a. Buildings, roads, transportation, and other indoor and outdoor facilities, including schools, housing, medical facilities, and workplaces. B. Information, communication, and other services, including electronic services and emergency services. 2. States parties shall also take appropriate measures. A. To develop, promulgate, and monitor the implementation of minimum standards and guidelines for the accessibility of facilities and services, open or provided to the public. B. To ensure that private entities that offer facilities and services which are open or provided to the public take into account all aspects of accessibility for persons with disabilities. C. To provide training for stakeholders on accessibility issues facing persons with disabilities. D. To provide in buildings and other facilities open to the public signage in Braille and in easy to read and understand forms. E. To provide forms of live assistance and intermediaries, including guides, readers, and professional sign language interpreters, to facilitate accessibility to buildings and other facilities open to the public. F. To promote other appropriate forms of assistance and support to persons with disabilities, to ensure their access to information. G. To promote access for persons with disabilities to new information and communications technologies and systems, including the Internet. H. To promote the design, development, production, and distribution of accessible information and communications technologies and systems at an early stage, so that these technologies and systems become accessible at minimum cost. The Manifesto of Accessible Tourism of Turin, 2009, states that the person in its most complete meaning, with his or her specific needs, derived from personal and health conditions, for example, motor, sensory, intellectual disabilities, food intolerances, etc., is a citizen and a customer who has the right to benefit from the tourist offer in a complete and autonomous way, receiving adequate services commensurate with a fair price-quality ratio. Dorsey and Dixon say instead that accessible tourism enables people with access requirements, including mobility, vision, hearing, and cognitive dimensions of access, to function independently and with equity and dignity. through the delivery of universally designed tourism products, services, and environments. This definition is inclusive of all people, including those traveling with children in prams, people with disabilities, and seniors. The reference to universally designed recalls a cultural movement born in 1985. Universal design. I entrust the definition of the concept to the words of architect Ronald Mays of North Carolina State University, who first used it in 1985, inaugurating a new season in the field of building and architectural design, a concept that was later changed by other disciplines. Universal design is the design of products and environments to be usable by all people to the greatest extent possible without the need for adaptation or specialized design. Starting from this principle, an AW tour is certainly a service aimed at a category of people, but preferably not exclusively, so it is designed to be used by as many customers as possible. The other way must be accessible for most people. Moreover, the idea that an AW tour requires a wide, rigorous design phase, the result of a constant comparison between different skills and professionalism, comes directly from this school of thought. The European Accessibility Act 2010 is a document inspired by the Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and concerning the accessibility of goods and services provided by the European market to people with disabilities, which underlines that accessibility determines the full and effective participation of people with disabilities in European social and economic life. We are currently waiting to know the results of the European Disability Strategy 2010-2020, which aims to promote a barrier-free Europe and at empower people with disabilities so that they can enjoy their rights and participate fully in society and economy. At the end of these lessons, I would like to offer at least 4 criteria recurring in the literature and related to accessibility. In fact, the reference to universal design does not exclude that we can have minimum references. It is not a question for us to know how many centimeters from the ground a bell should be placed, for example, but at least to establish whether a place that has it can be defined as accessible. At general level, and for all types of structures, it is possible to define 4 critical factors, to which reference can be made to define the degree of accessibility of tourist facilities. Horizontal mobility, overcoming distances, concerns the length and characteristics of the connection paths between the different functional areas of the structure, the dimensions and characteristics of the doors and access passages, the arrangement of the furnishings. Vertical mobility, overcoming distances in height, stairs, inclined ramps, and other mechanical systems for connecting different floors. The use of environmental units. Each environment must be arranged in such a way as to be easily accessible to people with disabilities, by eliminating obstacles and differences in level and careful arrangement of the furniture elements. Respect and integration of the different regulations, architectural barriers, safety, fire protection, etc. The technical requirements that the spaces must possess have to be proposed in relation to a priority criterion for each type of disability defined. In fact, the requirement that satisfies the need of a person with a certain disability may not be a priority for another. For example, people with vision problems prefer to overcome differences in level using the steps, while for those who use a wheelchair, the use of inclined ramps with a contained slope is a priority. We will go deeper into these points when we talk about the design and verification of the tour. In this lesson, the images are used for educational purposes only, and for the most part are original. Those for which it has been possible to identify the source are mentioned in the image itself. For the others, the author remains available to give credit to any rights holder who requests it, using the following address: peraltravia@gmail.com.